Listeners, my name is Shannon Cooney from Merrick Property Group Real Estate Agency and a very proud sponsor of the Para Cave podcast. If you own a property in the Penrith LGA or Lower Blue Mountains and would like to know what it's worth in today's market, give me a call on 0421 588 445.
Broadcasting live from the Para Cave. Hello and welcome to another bumper episode of the Para Cave podcast. My name is Troy Warner and I'll be your host this week and every week. And today we are back into the interview-based podcasts with another player of the Parramatta Eels. We're going to celebrate again the 75th anniversary of the Parramatta Eels, and it's episode 115. And as I said, we're going back to celebrating the 75th year of the Parramatta Eels in the competition. So my guest today played at Para in 2 stints, making his debut at the Eels, and he also finished his playing career there as well, but he also played at the South Sydney Rabbitohs in between those 2 Eel stints, and that is Mr. David Penna. Now, during the chat with David, we chat about early rugby league memories, we chat about his debut game at the Eels, playing alongside Parramatta royalty in Brett Kenny and Peter Sterling, and also being coached by the legendary Mick Cronin. He's moving to South and playing at the Rabbitohs as well, the Super League era, how he got back to Parramatta, and we talk about that prelim final versus the Bulldogs. I know it's one of my worst Parramatta memories as well, and I'm sorry to bring that up again to those Parramatta fans, but I had to ask David for his side of the story. We also talk about coaching in the NRL, along with some common league questions, the personality set of 6 questions, and much, much more. So much to get through and so much to listen to. All brought to you by major sponsor Jack's Pale Ale, which is exclusively available at Parramatta Leagues Club in the club shop. And also a shout out to our co-sponsors as well. Shannon Cooney from the Merrick Property Group, who you heard at the top of the podcast. Also the Stubby Club. And listeners, for the best present for that sports fanatic in your life, the Stubby Club has a huge range of sports merchandise and gifts to choose from. All you need to do is just head to thestubbyclub.com.au and remember, use the discount code PARACAVE at the checkout for a 10% discount. And also a thanks and shout out to co-sponsor Bo Cook from Loan Market, your local Penrith mortgage expert. From everything from first home loans, refinancing, and also home loans and more. Bo Cook and his team he is the man with the help and the answers. How do I know? Well, Bo helped myself and my wife Amanda with a home loan, so we have that personal experience of what Bo and his team can do for you, especially during these difficult financial times. They will work to get the best deal for you. So contact Bo today on 0401 213 236 and get in contact today for a free chat and see what Bo can do for you, and let him know that you heard it here on the Para Cave podcast. Thank you to all the sponsors. With your support, it helps the podcast grow and reach more people, which is much appreciated. But enough of me talking. Let's get into the chat with David Penna and have a listen to his rugby league and life story. So as Hindy says,
get a beer, coffee, whatever you want.
Sit back, relax, and enjoy, and let's get straight into it.
So, hi, it's David Penna here, former Parramatta and South Sydney player. About to have a chat with Troy on the Parra Cave podcast.
And as you heard from his intro, my guest today on the Parra Cave podcast is a former professional rugby league player at the South Sydney Rabbitohs, but is probably best known for playing at the club that I love in the Parramatta Eels in 2 stints, making his debut there and also finishing his career there. Played 134 games, scoring 32 tries, a player I watched play his whole career, and since retirement from playing, he's had a few assistant coaching roles as well. But with it being the 75th year of the Eels in the competition, why not get another Eels player on? So welcome to the Parra Cave podcast, Eels player 489, Mr. David Penna.
G'day, Troy. How are you, mate?
Not too bad. Thank you very much for joining me. Now, growing up, where did you spend the early part of your life, and was rugby league a part of that early childhood life?
Yeah, it was, mate. I grew up in the western suburbs of Sydney in a place called Bosley Park, which is at the back of sort of Fairfield.
Yep.
Fell in love with rugby league when my grandfather took me up to a park at Wetherill Park there, and it was a club training and at the age of 8, and jumped into it and then just loved it ever since.
Nice. Well, is that your earliest rugby league memory?
Yeah, pretty much. I've got a memory with obviously him taking me to training and then enjoying it, and then I guess as I was playing with the Cabravale Diggers, which was a club sort of that. So I don't think they're no longer around. The club is. I think they joined forces with another local rugby league club. But yeah, just loved it, mate, and then fell in love with the Eels as a kid, and they were my favourite club. And remember Dad taking me. I guess my fondest memory, was the first thing was the old Cumberland Oval, where Parramatta's or the stadium sits now, but it used to be Cumberland Oval. And he took me there one day and chucked me on his shoulders, and we watched Parramatta play. And I think I went to the 81, 82 and 83 grand finals.
Nice.
Yeah, and you know that you'll have a club when you get nervous before a game and you're not even playing. So it was a club that I always loved and always had dreams of being one of those players, and was lucky enough to be able to do that.
And then obviously out of those grand final winning teams, who were some of the players that you used to like watching play?
My favourite player was Brett Kenny.
Okay.
I used to love Brett.
Yeah.
And Sterlo and Zip Man, Stevie Ella, and all those fellas, Eric Grove. They were sort of the guys I remember fondly. And I guess as a dream, I was lucky enough as a kid that when I did get graded, some of those players were still there, and to be able to sort of kick a footy around and become mates with blokes that were my idols as a kid, was pretty special.
Oh yeah, definitely. Did you have to pinch yourself when you were in that same team?
Every day, mate, every day. It was, it's a dream to play for a club, but let alone the players you used to watch and idolise, to be able to, I remember one training session, that was in the days when you'd have 65 players running around all at the same time on a Saturday morning, and Sterlo kicked me the footy. I kicked it back to him, and then he kicked it back to me, and I thought, hang on, didn't know whether I was allowed to keep doing it or not. And I kept going. As long as he wanted to keep going, I would have stayed there all day. So it was, some great memories.
Nice. And then it must have been pretty awesome to be coached by Mick Cronin as well. What sort of a coach was Mick?
Yeah, look, Mick was great. Look, for me, I was only a young fella, and Bob O'Reilly was the reserve grade coach. And again, these were legends of of the club. And look, Mick was a great coach. Mick didn't say a lot, but you knew that, when he did speak to you and what he said made a lot of sense and made you feel comfortable. Me being young, it was difficult at the time, but now you think about it when you've gone back into your own coaching, you can see the type of coach he was. And you don't need to say a hell of a lot to a player for it to mean something. So it was pretty special, mate, pretty special.
I couldn't imagine Mick would have a spray at him at all, would he? Being such a quiet, humble man.
He was humble, mate. He didn't really have a spray. No, not really. Neither did the Bear, really. I think they just had that aura about them of, that they knew what they were doing and they wanted you to do something. And we had, it wasn't the easiest times at that time when Mick was there. We weren't, that was when Sterlo had to retire and Brett was at the end of his career and a few of the other players retired. So we were quite a young footy team. And we're probably on the wrong end of it 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
But it was, for a lot of us, just wearing the jersey was more important than actually winning or losing at the time.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of being a young kid, you were 17 when you made your debut against the Sharks at Para Stadium in a Friday night in front of 18,000 fans. What stands out for you of that debut game?
Oh, look, it was just, again, playing against the players I was playing against. It was, again, you see these guys and you don't, it's a weird feeling. You don't think you're you're out there and you're sort of one of them, but you don't see yourself as one of them. We're playing against E.T. and Mark McGaw and Gavin Miller and all those sorts of players. And I guess it was just exciting for me. I just wanted to have a run and get tackled and just be out there. Look, it just felt like everything went so quick. It was like 100 mile an hour, and it was like I blinked and I missed it. I didn't get a lot of time that game. I came off the bench, but it was pretty special, very special.
Just speaking of the age factor, you made your debut at 17, and I think the NRL's got a rule these days that you've got to be 18. Do you think 18 is the right age, or do you think it's a case of every player take it on its merits?
No, look, I think, to be honest, if the way that I would coach these days, I would probably say that 17 is a bit too young.
Okay.
Not simply, it's, most, you're going to find the odd player that's physically going to be right to aim up against it. And I guess the right player that's mentally right as well. I probably, now I think about it, probably wasn't strong enough mentally to understand what I was doing and what was going on. I guess that's an important part. I guess back then it was more, it was an opportunity. I think back then, for me, it was an opportunity where you could play, I think it was under 21s at the time or under 23s, and then you could play reserve grade and you could play first grade all on the same day.
Yeah, that's right.
Where you had that opportunity to be able to be given small doses of the senior footy without having to actually put a player in a situation where he's got to go out there and perform for 80 minutes. And I guess back then, when you followed a club and you followed a player, you got to see a player come through the ranks. So you knew he was a good player. So you weren't too hard on him when he came to the NRL, where there's so much expectation on these young players these days because there's only 30 blokes in the entire club, really, when it comes at that can play at that level on 1 year. And I think the expectation that if a kid goes out at 17 or 18 that he needs to be a superstar, and if he's not, everybody's giving him a hard time. And I think that's probably the unfair part. And, we didn't have social media or any of those sorts of things, but you had support around you, and an old bloke would come over, coach and say, mate, great game, even if you didn't play one, where it's all about results today. So for me, 17 was great, and you're still going to have players in our game that, at the age of 17 and 18 are going to be ready.
Yep.
And some of them handle it a hell of a lot better than others, and some of them go on to become superstars of our game, and then others basically, battle through their careers. And I think that's the important part, to make sure that you're there for the long term, not just 10 games and then you're out of there, and not to be judged on that.
Yep.
I guess that's the hardest part about footy in this current environment that it is at the moment.
You mentioned some of the older heads there. Back when you first started, was it the older heads like Matty Goodwin, Mark Laurie, and Sterlo and Kenny that took you under their wings? Absolutely. And even for reserve grade, when you had Mark Clinton and Greg Drake, and I was lucky enough to play with Grant Izzard, and God, what was his name? Sorry, mate, I'm getting old myself. But all of those guys, and when you came in, you're at training and you're around them, and all they wanted to do was have fun with you and make you enjoy what you were doing. My very, very first NRL game where I started, I'll never forget it. It was against the Broncos. It was a Friday night game. And Brett Kenny grabbed me in the warm-up
And I was as nervous, like, mate, you couldn't imagine how nervous I was. I couldn't sit still. I was sweating bullets.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was going on. And he grabbed me to the side and we started warming up. And he started dancing when he was warming up with me. And,
Yeah.
you know, it made me laugh a little bit. And I thought, this bloke's the bloke that I idolise more than any person in the world. And I'm just waiting for him to say to me, don't you miss a tackle. And all he wanted to do was dance and make me remember the moment. And it was, and that was the best part, being a young fella, that you weren't out there and you had older heads around you that would look after you. And they would look after you. And they'd look after you on the field and they'd look after you off the field.
He was certainly that laid-back character, wasn't he, Bert? Like, I've heard stories that he'd be falling asleep in the change rooms before a game.
Mate, he was one of, I still see him as one of the greatest players I've ever sort of watched or been able to watch play, that probably doesn't get the credit that he did, but he was a fantastic player.
With the big immortal debate, do you think Brett should be an immortal of rugby league?
Well, mate, I don't know. I don't think. Look, the big immortal debate, I guess, is for anybody, but I think that anybody that plays at that level, I think it's unfair to judge them whether they're an immortal or not. In my eyes, anybody that's played for their country or their state and played the game for that long period, 10 years, 300 plus games, whatever it is, they're already immortals in my eyes as a player. I guess, it's great that we can, nominate players, and the players that are immortals now are some of the greatest players to ever play our game. But I think, when do you stop?
Yeah.
You look at the old players that played, like Brad Fittler. It was in my era. I think Brad's was one of the best players I'd ever played against or with. There's a lot of great players out there that probably won't ever be immortals, but you ask anybody that played against them, they're immortals in their eyes, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, that's a fair call. There's always a big debate about who should get in, who should get out. But no, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
In 92 and 93, you play 11 games combined, but one of those games in 93 was against the Broncos at the opening of their temporary home, the QE2 Stadium. Para got the chocolates, 12-8. What do you remember about that game? And after being the premiers, did that give the team confidence at that time?
Oh, look, we won that game and no one gave us any chance. I don't think they did either. Maybe that's probably why we won. That's what stayed there. But again, you when you're playing those games, you're just pinching yourself.
Yeah.
Now you've been a coach and you understand. Probably that's why most of the coaches, at the end of the day, that's why they drop you in the end, because you don't sort of see it as being like it's important. But I guess it's more the era of playing those types of guys. It was a great game and something that you'll always remember, particularly beating the premiers and you're playing against those great players. It makes a big difference.
I know. Speaking of Mickey Butner, a few years now ago, he's pretty happy about that game, scoring all the points. He
scored all the points, yeah, Mickey B. So we grew up together.
Okay.
So he was a year younger than me. We both played at Cabra Diggers and he lived at Fairfield Heights and I lived at Bosley Parks. We weren't too far, so we sort of did a lot of stuff together as kids, and then came through those systems together. So yeah, he's a good fella, man.
Nice. Yeah, no, he definitely is doing great stuff as well now off the field. What were your favourite memories of playing at Para for that first time around? Because after that, you moved to South Sydney.
Yeah, look, mate, to be honest, it was a bit of a roller coaster for me. I sort of, like you said, came on the scene at a really young age. Remember being able, I guess the best part of it all was being able to play with players that I sort of idolised and still do. It was, I learnt a lot as a player, what I needed to do. I was probably spent, 12 months on the sideline in total with injuries. Got had a really badly broken ankle and reconstructed ankle and a few things that just didn't go the way that everybody thought things would go. And I guess it probably made me stronger as a person. To go through those things and check yourself where you need to be and what needs to happen for you. And then, obviously ended up at South and got an opportunity to go there and a new lease of life. And got to play probably more first grade than I did in my first stint at Parramatta. But I was in a side where footy sort of come full circle for me, where it was more important about, making sure you're focused and playing well every week, and we're in a side that was relatively young and had some quality players on the up coming through, and probably learnt more than I did at Para once I went to South, and it was a great club, still is a very good club, and really enjoyed my time there.
Well, I mean, it must have been a great move because you played in the Tooheys Challenge Cup winning side, beating Broncos. That must
against
have,
the Broncos again. I got the wood on them, I think, at the moment. So yeah.
Must have given yourself and the club at the time confidence.
Yeah, look, that was great. The Tooheys Challenge was fantastic. That was something. There was a whole group of us that didn't. We had to fly into Gunnedah to play. I think it was St George in the semi-final, and the bloke who was flying the plane were on one of those sort of 40-seaters or whatever it was, and we dead set. We came in and it was pretty windy, and we hit the runway on one angle, we hit it twice on another angle, and then he took off again and headed back up. By that stage, I was in the fetal position because I hate flying as it was, and there was about 4 or 5 other boys. So that's probably a memory that I'll never ever forget. Where I remember Nathan Gibbs was the club doctor at the time, and he had to give us all needles to settle our stomachs down and everything else that was going wrong. And then we went out and beat St George, and then we come up against a pretty strong and fully stacked Broncos team the following week, and got the chocolates, and that was pretty special. It was a lot of us hadn't won anything before, so it was pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. It was a title that South hadn't won before, and a title that South hadn't won in a while. You mostly played at centre at South, although in your career you did play all the backline positions. But you mostly played 5'8" or centre. Which one was your favourite to play?
Oh, look, as a kid, I was 5'8" was my position. That's what I liked playing. Yeah. You find out really quickly when you get into those sort of rep teams and senior teams that as long as you're in the team and you're playing well, it sort of doesn't really matter too much where you play. I was lucky enough, obviously a little bit of speed then, not much now, but a little bit of speed then where, I could fill in the centres and play there. And if you've got quality players inside you, that's a pretty good position to play anyway. I enjoyed playing in all those positions, but 5'8" was probably my favourite position.
Now, your time at the Rabbitohs was during that Super League era of 95 to 97. Yeah. Was that a difficult time for yourself?
It was, mate. It was a difficult time. I think it was a difficult time for everybody, unless you were some of the elite players at that time.
Yep.
A lot of blokes become very, very rich overnight. But I think it was a difficult time if you're one of those sort of players. They would sort of not your top end players, but your players that sort of battle to stay in first grade every week, not knowing or understanding what was sort of going on. And at the time, there was a lot of money being thrown around, and different things were happening, and players are going here and there and everywhere. And for me, it was more about me just making sure I was at somewhere where I could keep being an NRL player.
Yep.
We went from sort of, when I was at South at the early days, we went from being sort of semi-professional to professional players through that period of time. But yeah, it was very. I think it was different for everybody that period.
Was there ever any temptation to sign at all with Super League?
Oh, mate, I would have signed with anybody.
Yeah, fair enough.
I wasn't playing all that well. Look, and I'd be honest, and it was at a time where, it wasn't really explained to, unless you were at what we call, unless you're a rep player, or at that top echelon of players, who were being taken into rooms and signed deals for lots and lots of money. Everybody else didn't really know what was going on. I guess there was certain clubs that were going to stay with Super League, certain clubs that weren't. People saying it's never going to happen, and it did. So I guess it was a confusing time for most people. I'm guessing I'm not the only one that would have been a player at that time. Whatever they were going to offer you, as long as you kept your job and you were staying alive, that's what you did. So
yeah, for sure. Well, in '98 you moved back to the Eels.
Yeah.
Was that Brian Smith who got you back there?
Mate, it was, and
Yeah.
it's again another small story, but it was Jason Bell and myself were very good friends. We became very good friends at Parramatta in the early days, and then Jason moved to South when I did, and then the year before I stayed at South, Jace went back to Parramatta. South, he didn't want to stay at South anymore, and had a fantastic year. I think he got their Player of the Year. He was outstanding that year. They got beat by, I think it was Newcastle in the major semi, and Jason got married that year, and I got invited to his wedding, and he sat me on. I sat at the same table as Brian, and we were just talking, and I was giving the game away. I was retiring.
Oh, really?
Yeah, South didn't have a contract for me, and I didn't really have a manager, and I was at that sort of, I'd been, because I'd played at such a young age, I was thinking I was an old man by that stage, at the ripe old age of 26, and he asked me what I was doing, and I wasn't that fit at that time. I'd had a couple of weeks off. I'd been in a good panic, and he just said, "Oh, look, would you be interested in, if you had a crack, would you do it again?" I said, "Mate, in a heartbeat." And he said, "Well, give me a call next week and we'll see." And I rang and nothing happened, and then rang again, and he said, "Look, I've got nothing for you, but if you want to come down and play for a contract and play for match payments, if you get into the NRL, it's up to you." So I was working for my father at the time, and so I quit my job and I went and backed myself and did a pre-season there. It was a totally different Parramatta at that stage, and there were some great players who now become some great friends of mine, and Jared McCracken and Jimmy Dimmick, Jason Smith, all very good players that went across to Parramatta through that whole Super League setup, and I was in a football team where I had some quality players. It was a very good footy side, and all I had to do was worry about myself. Well, I firstly had to worry about getting fit again and try to get in there, and I worked my butt off. Got myself fit and had a young family as well, so I had to try and to make sure they were okay, and I guess the rest is history. But ended up playing. I think I played about 18 or 19 games that year, which was great, and then I got a 3-year deal off the back of that. But that was great going there, and Brian Smith was probably not being disrespectful to other coaches, but being so young, and coaches that I had that were ex-players that were just all about enjoying footy and understanding it. He was probably the first coach that sort of sat me down and made the importance of where you played and what role you played within the team. And I learnt a lot from Brian, just being coached by him. Good and bad, but learned a lot about how he prepared teams. And he was probably one of those guys that was ahead of times in the way that people do things these days, but with video and preparation and that sort of thing. So he was a very good coach, and I was in a really good footy team, and probably played the best football of my career at that time.
During your coaching time, have you used any of Brian's coaching methods at all?
Yeah, mate, I have. It was funny. He actually got me into it, and he rang me one day, and at that time Parramatta were we were aligned with what they called what was called there at the time. I can't remember what they're called now. Gone blank. Kellyville Bushrangers in an A grade, and Eric Grove was actually their coach. And he said, "Look, Eric's struggling and needs a hand. Would you be interested in doing some of that?" That's when I broke my neck and had to retire. And he said, "I said, yeah, look, absolutely, I would." And and a lot of things that Brian did, even to this day, the way he looks at a game and the way he does things and used to do things, got a lot out of it, for sure.
I'm assuming Brian would have a blow up in the sheds at halftime.
Oh, absolutely.
And
don't worry, that's probably all I learnt from him. No, you know what? The best blow up he ever had, and that's when I thought we were all in trouble. I think it was my first year with him, and we won. And Clinton Tchaikovsky, he must have run for 300 odd metres and scored 2 tries, kicked 2 goals, and he did something within the game. And we're doing video, and it wasn't to Brian's liking. And Brian picked up I think it was a large rubber, to rub off the whiteboard, and threw it at the television and said, "I will not accept this and that." And we're all sitting there thinking, oh, God, if he's going to go off about Clinton's game, I'm in all sorts of trouble here. But, no, he was good at having a spray. He could give you a good spray, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, I remember
spray.
talking to Dallas Weston a few months ago, and
Yeah.
he remembers the one against North Sydney. I don't know if it was a semi-final game, and anyway, Brian came down for the chat, and then went out back upstairs, and then Dean Page just said, "Oh, look, don't worry about what he said. Let's just go out there and play footy."
Yeah, he was, and it was good. Like, he had blokes with Dino and Jimmy and Crackers and that. They could cop those sprays. I think, like, so it was mainly the blokes that were on the fringe that would get a bit nervous. But he wasn't always like that, mate. He didn't spray all the time. But I guess he taught me accountability. And obviously that's a massive big word in the game of rugby league now. But that's what a lot of coaches and players and clubs thrive themselves on, being accountable to one another.
Well, speaking of Jimmy Dimmick and that semi-final against North Sydney, I always remember that game for that penalty that Jim gave away when he just said to the referee, "Of course I hit him, I smashed him."
Yeah, just ask him. Phil smashed him.
Yeah, remember that. It was classic.
We're still very good friends. So we coached together. We coached together, and then he moved up here. I'm living up on the northern part of New South Wales, just on the border at Kingscliff, and Jimmy's at Palm Beach.
Yeah.
So we sort of moved up here together. We didn't realise we were coming up together, but he ended up at the Titans, and I was at the affiliate club for the Titans. And we lived together for a little while, and we still see each other all the time. So we're good friends. We still joke about that all the time.
Do you think Jim's a bit hard done by not being
Absolutely.
a head coach?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. And, look, there's no one better, and there's no one that would do a better job than Jim if he was a head coach. It's very political, the coaching world. For poor old Jim, and there's plenty of other guys that are out there that are very capable. It's just whether you can get the opportunity to have a crack at it will be given. And poor old Jimmy, every time he got the opportunity, someone else would come in and sit under them, and then someone else would come in, and then pretty hard on Jim. But he's a fantastic coach, and he's someone he's survived. He'll survive. He'll keep working, and he'll go somewhere. And players love him, and players love working with him, mate. So he'll be fine, hopefully.
Yeah, no doubt. We'll see him back in the NRL in some capacity at some side. I'd love to have him back at Para as an assistant coach. That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'd all like to go back to Para. They're going fantastic. That'd be great.
Now, I'm sorry to chat about this game, but it's one of the two games that I hate talking about, and I won't watch a replay, but it's the 1998 prelim final against the Dogs.
Oh, against the Bulldogs.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that game? What went wrong for Parramatta on that day?
Oh, mate. For me, it wasn't like it was. I think it was more. We were excited when we got in front, and then I think it just all sort of went. We know what we needed to do, and they were a good footy side, and it was a bit surreal. Like, it was like we're in front and we're cruising and everything was going okay, and then. Within a split second, everything turned around, and then you got nervous, and then we weren't playing as a team, and missing tackles. I think I missed a few myself. So, and then everybody sort of poor old Paul Carriage. Actually, he got hammered where he's chipped over the top, and they nearly kicked the field goal. But you can't blame him. But there was plenty of things that went wrong, mate. They're times that you kick yourself as you get a bit older. That you just wish you. I guess particularly now you coach. Once you get into coaching, there's a lot of games that I remember that as a player, I wish I had the knowledge I did now, because I probably wouldn't have done half the things that I did. But that's part of growing up and part of experience. But, it was a tough old day in the office, that's for sure.
Definitely. Well, Aaron Raper says it's the strangest game that he ever played in.
Oh, it was weird, mate. I don't like watching it either.
No, I switched the channel. Well, 1999, you mostly play halfback, and the Eels finished 2 points behind the Sharks. Going that well and playing in that number 7 jersey, did you feel the pressure of playing in that jersey because of the...
No, not really. It's funny you ask that. Like, every time there seems to be an article on Parramatta, you get a start in the paper saying these were the halves, and there wasn't a great halfback from Peter Sterling to now. Mitchell Moses has been the best halfback since Peter Sterling. I never ever said I was a halfback.
Okay.
I just wanted to be in the team, and as long as I could do my job, it was quite easy. I had Jason Smith on one side and Jimmy Dimmick on the other. And I said to Brian, look, there's no need for me to really be the so-called halfback that has to run everything. I just got to make sure I get my kicks and put my kicks where I need them to be, and make sure when Jimmy wants it, he gets it, or when Jace wants it, he gets it. So it was it was pretty simple. They were great players, and mate, I just enjoyed every moment of it. It was good, and Brian gave me an opportunity to play there. It wasn't something I was comfortable with. I'd rather play 5'8", but I just sort of was the link between those two guys, and it worked really well for us.
Do you think that's the sort of mindset that Jake Arthur should take into games these days? Like when he comes onto the field, he's just got to pass the ball.
Look, I
get
think
the
it's
kicks
hard
away?
for Jake. I know Jake very, very well. Good friends with his dad. We've coached together at Manly, and I've seen Jakey grow up from a young boy into a very good young man. And look, people are hard on Jake. It's it's when you're a certain style of player and they want to try and pigeonhole you. It's people keep forgetting he's only 19.
Yeah.
It's I think for Jake, he's a smart player. He's a smart footy player. Him and his dad, I know, work really, really hard on his game. And I think for Jake's just got to just keep working hard on those little things that he does and be Jake. He's a fantastic kid, and people need to give him time. So.
Well, it was great to see the other night when he came off, when Mitchell Moses came back on, that the crowd was actually standing and cheering Jake as he walked around the field. That was a nice touch.
And that's what he deserves, And like we talked about it earlier when you asked me, about 17-year-old being a young age, and he's done some fantastic things as a half, and he's your old-fashioned half where he can steer a team around the park, put his kicks in where they need to be. He doesn't need to be running the lengths of the field tries or coming up with plays like Mitchell does. He just needs to be Jake, and people need to give him time to be Jake.
Yeah, that's it. We wish him all the best. Now that prelim final versus Melbourne at the old SFS. I was there. I was there that night. There was a great try to Stuart Kelly, and then I thought there was an elbow to Jason Smith's head from Stephen Kearney, I think it was, and I thought that turned the game. How did you see that game? Does that one hurt more than the 98
Mate, that one was a tough one for me. Not a lot of people probably were aware of it, but we went into camp the night before. We went down and we stayed at Bondi, in a nice big hotel down there at Bondi, and we went out for dinner. We ate dinner, I think we had a dinner at the hotel, but we had dinner all together, and it was just about sort of getting together as a team. And it was around about would have been about 10 o'clock at night. I didn't feel real good.
Okay.
I didn't know what had hit me, but by 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was on my phone and on the toilet and had a bucket at the other end, and it was I spent most of the night up and trying to get the doc and needled, and then I had to do a fitness test in the park the day before that morning of there, and Dino come and saw me and said, well, you just got to be right, mate. You'll be right, you'll get out there. And I did, but wasn't feeling the best. And then we got in front, and then we're going okay, and then again it was sort of very, very, very quickly things just swung around, and they were just too good again in the end. So that was the closest I ever got. You dread it, So I went away from a grand final, but 2 years in a row, I think it was, wasn't it? So if I can imagine what it would have been like for poor old supporters, but wasn't to be.
That's okay. That'll happen this week, I'm sure. The 2000 season is probably one that you'd like to forget. Unfortunately, you had 6 concussions and broke your neck twice. How did you get through that tough time? I mean, that's pretty scary stuff, breaking your neck.
Yeah, it was. It was, and I could feel, obviously getting towards the back end of my career, but still felt I had plenty to offer the club. And first time, I did it to myself and hit my head and came off the field in a tackle. Hit Daniel Wagon's hip and come off the field, and I felt okay. And there was obviously no concussion rules, and felt a bit stiff in the neck and everything, but just I was okay. And I got a bit of a spray from Brian earlier a couple of weeks earlier about not a spray from him, but just talking about being stronger and mentally tougher and staying out there and getting into things. And I guess that wasn't one of my strongest points. And I just thought about that, and he said, "Are you right to go?" The doc, I said, "Yeah, I'm right." And I went back out there, and then we finished the game, and I got hit again late in the game. So then I came off, and I woke up okay the next day, but I was really stiff, which you normally are. But I was really stiff in the neck and that. So I went and saw the doc on the Monday, and he said, "Oh, look, I'll send you for some scans." And I did that, and he gave me a neck brace, and I said, "I'm not wearing this." So threw it in the back of the car and went home to pick the kids up from school. And he rang me that afternoon and said, "You got that neck brace on?" I said, "Yeah, of course I have." And he said, "You need to get back here and see me straight away." I went back and saw him and had a fracture in the C4 vertebrae in my neck, the front part, which sort of scared me at the time, and everything sort of went, I was 28 at that time, and everything was sort of going through my head. Anyway, he said, "Look, this is the plan. You need to go and see a surgeon and a specialist," and they put me in this sort of contraption for 12 weeks. But then the doc said to me, "Look, you should be right. It's like any broken bone." He said, "It'll heal." He said, "You don't seem to have hell of a lot of damage around the spinal cord or the ligaments around that. It's mainly just a fracture, and he said, you should be right." So I took that off, and then I spent probably another 2 or 3 weeks, I think it was, just starting to train again and run and get some strength and fitness and stuff like that. And then I think it would have been about around 18. I think that was round 3, I think it might have been. I'm not sure when it was now, but round 18, I was right to go, and I come back in reserve grade. Played pretty well. Had a couple of scares, made a few tackles, and thought, "Oh, hang on, no, I'm okay." And I was lucky at that time. Shane Flanagan was coaching the reserve grade, and we had some really good players, and Dave Kidwell and Gary Larson, and a lot of these young guys that have gone on, and Luke Burt, a lot of these young guys went on, Casey Maguire, a lot of guys that went on and played NRL at all over sort of clubs and that. And I was just really enjoying my footy. We were flogging everybody. We had a pretty good side. And then I got back into first grade and up against Cronulla, round 2, out there at Shark Park, and unfortunately got hit in a pretty high tackle. And woke up in a hospital there in Cronulla, and then sent me back for more scans, and they said there was it looked like I might have had another sort of clearing around that fracture again, and basically that was it. And they sort of said, "Mate, look, you need to make some decisions on where you are." I had a year to go on my contract, so it was pretty tough, and I just at the end I had to make the decision to retire.
How difficult was that to make that decision, or was it just a no-brainer?
No, it was difficult. I just felt that I was starting to play footy again. I had another year to go on my contract, and I was really enjoying my footy. And then part of you thinks, well, look, you're going to be retired, but now you look at it, you're retired a hell of a long time. So, it wasn't easy, and life was tough for a while there. But we came through the other side of it, and again, everything that doesn't kill you makes you stronger, I suppose.
That's a good way to look at it. You mentioned concussions there, the concussion rule. Do you think the NRL these days is doing enough about concussions in the game?
Look, I think they are. To be perfectly honest, I have to talk to players in my current role all the time about these sorts of things, and everybody sees it as something that you do well. And I guess, it was very topical last night with Mario Fennick on the television and where Mario's at with his life. People don't see it, but I used to be able to remember everything. I was the best. I could have the best memory ever. And probably in the last, so maybe 5 to 10 years, my memory, just not great, but you just little things, I'll be honest, I don't remember my first try that I scored. And people go, "Oh, well, that's weird," but I don't see it being weird, but I don't know whether it's old age or, things like that, I guess. When you're coaching, you see things and you can pick up on things, but so every now and then I give players nicknames, so you go a bit blank every now and then. But
Yeah.
I don't think I'm the only one that went through that era, but I don't think you're ever going to stop it. To be perfectly honest, it's something that's always been in our game, but we've obviously made people really, really aware of it now. But look, I feel like I coached young Cam Murray for a couple of years there at South, and he's a fantastic player, fantastic competitor.
Oh, definitely.
But it makes you sick when you see Cam where he is, and you just want them as they get older to be okay. But I don't think people realise that players in a short period of time, what they do to their bodies really takes effect on you as you get older. When you get older.
Two-part question. Do you think that they should have a mandatory 1 week off after having a concussion? And what you just said about sort of losing memory from the last 5-10 years, are you worried about the future, about your memory?
Oh, look, absolutely I am. And it's that's all. Sometimes that's all you got.
Yeah.
But look, like I said, I'm not bad, but you notice little things, But look, I don't know. Look, I don't think there's any. I couldn't give you the answer.
Yeah.
I think at first, what was disappointing that first with the whole concussion thing, it was more about the legal side of things and the logistics of it with what happened with the NRL with that movie, concussion, and with the NFL, sorry, and what was going on in the States with everybody suing everybody. And I think at first it was more about that more than it being about players' welfare. But I think it's just become more and more noticeable in a game these days because of the pace that they're playing at. People want to say, oh, back in the day, games were harder and tougher. Because you got away with a bit more. But they've never been any faster or any more physical than what they are currently. And they're only going to get quicker and faster and physical. Like you watch those elite players when they play State of Origin and those semi-finals in the last couple of weeks.
Oh, yeah.
The speed and the pace of the game and the downtime of where the game's at. The body's only going to get, harder and harder and harder and faster and faster and faster. And then the longer that they do that, I don't think you're ever going to knock it out of the game, unfortunately.
No.
And players don't purposely go out there to hit players high. I think that's a bit harsh. The ones that are which is one in 100, where players purposely go out to try and hurt somebody. I just think it's one of those things in a game that you're never ever going to stamp out, and you'll see more and more of it in the future. Unfortunately, it's just going to have to be part of the game. But to answer your question about whether they need to have some mandatory time off, I think 9 times out of 10 you can get a whack to the head and you'll be all right a week later. Mitchell proved that last week.
Yeah.
I think it's the players that continuously get them. And it's like anything, they talk about when you watch boxing about players having being punch drunk. Well, I know myself personally, if I was to hit my head, it wouldn't take much to knock me out, simply because of how many you've had.
Okay.
And you look at players now that you see that go down quite easily now when they have it happen to them, simply because and 9 out of 10 people go, oh, well, that's him again. Well, it's not. It's the same player again, but it's because he's more susceptible. It's more likely to happen to him because he's already had the others. And that's the scary part. They're the players where they need to say, look, no matter how good you are, that's where the well-being needs to be taken into account for that player.
Yeah, definitely. And for the record, it was 1992, round 21, against...
Yeah, who was it against?
North Sydney, at North Sydney Oval. You came off the bench.
Yeah.
You lost the game 28-8.
Oh, that's okay. I lost most games and I did win.
But you were the only try scorer for the Eels that day anyway, so...
And was it 1992, round 20 what?
21.
Round 21.
Yeah,
well, there you go.
North Sydney, there you go.
There you go. Yeah, how good's that? Oh, there you go.
There you go. Now,
Thank you for that, Troy.
You're all right, mate. You're all right. No worries. Now, some time for some common league questions brought to you by the Stubby Club, one of the proud sponsors of the podcast. where you can use the discount code PARACAVE for 10% off your purchases.
Beautiful.
Is there a favourite game, other than the games that we spoke about, is there a favourite game that you played during your career? One that you just thought, gee, I really love that game?
Yeah, there was. Obviously, there's a couple. One of the fondest memories was against North Sydney. We beat North Sydney in a semi-final on a Friday night, Parramatta Stadium. I think it might have been in '98 to go through to the thing, and Stewie made a break, and then off the back of it, I made a break and scored under the post, and then we kicked the ball late in the game and put him into a corner, and it just everything just felt like it had come full circle for me as a player. The emotion, the hairs on the back of your neck stood up, and it was just, and I felt like I was part of the team, that I'd helped the team, and I had a pretty good game. I was pretty happy with that one. And then we played same sort of time at Para. We played Melbourne Storm at Parramatta Stadium, and I had a really good game that day and played really well. And again, it was more that feeling after the game of being part of a special team, and that I contributed to that. There are probably two moments that stick out more than others.
Yeah, nice. Now, other than your home ground, did you have a favourite ground that you used to love playing?
Yeah, I used to love playing at the old Sydney Football Stadium. I scored 6 tries there one day. It was when I was a kid. Actually, when I was at Parramatta playing South. I found fortunate.
Okay.
But,
wow.
Played under. I didn't have a contract. They said, you'll love this. I didn't have a contract. So my contract was $500 to play for Parramatta. That was my sign-on fee. So I was loaded at the time. And I used to get paid, I think at the time it was around about $500 to play under 23s. So that matched me sign-on.
Yeah.
And then I got $1,200 if I got on in reserve grade at any stage. And then $3,000 if I played first grade, because whoever did the deal didn't think I was going to play first grade.
Okay.
And I ended up playing all 3 grades on that day, and scored 6 tries. And so I thought it was Christmas.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
earned more money than I did the entire year in one day. So that's brilliant. That was a fond memory. That was a good one. So I used to love playing at the old football stadium. That was good.
Have you got a least favourite one you hated playing at?
Yeah. I used to hate playing. At Newcastle.
Okay. Yeah.
They used to have the shitty old sheds. When you knew when you went up there you were going to get bashed. Newcastle was one of my happiest teams, and even as a coach, mate, to be brutally honest, there's one place I don't like going.
I was pretty much there that day that Andrew Johns was putting up those bombs for Clinton Shavovsky.
Paul Clint, yeah.
Paul Carriage.
Looking for him under the sheets when he got home, I think.
It was a terrible day for him and Eels fans as well.
Oh.
Who didn't you want to be tackled by? Who was the hardest hitter?
Oh, no, it wasn't too many guys. I think in the early day when you were playing against the old hardheads, you knew that they were going to give you a hard time and stand on your hand or grab you, or pull your ears or whatever. You knew you were going to cop it if you're a young fella. I guess the 2 players that stick to my mind when I got into NRL, which were the hardest players to tackle, and particularly when you're in a struggling team, was Gordy Tallis. Oh, yeah. He used to growl when he run. It was amazing, Gordy. And the other one was Solomon Hamono.
Oh, okay.
From Manly. He would. Solomon was just almost impossible to tackle. He was just one of those just really big, strong fellas. So probably those 2 fellas.
I was actually talking to one of your mates, Lee Odenryan, this morning for the podcast.
Leroy,
yeah. He says to say hi, and
is he still a police officer? Where's he working at?
I think he's retired now. I think
he's up here this way, somewhere.
I think so. Yeah. He actually said that Solomon Hamono was the hardest hitter. That got him beauty one day.
Oh, there was plenty of blokes you wouldn't run straight at. If you were smart, there was plenty of fellas you wouldn't run straight at. But there was plenty of blokes too that once they got older, they would let you know they got older. That's for sure.
Definitely. Now you played with and against some champion players during your career, but is there someone that you would have loved to have had in your team or even play against?
Oh, mate, look, I was, obviously I played with Brad Fittler as a kid. We sort of grew up in the same area. and we played some school football together. And he was, even as a kid, he was just a level above everybody else. I loved playing with him. It would have been great to play alongside him. And then I was fortunate enough to play when we were coaching at Manly. Joey was one of the coaches with us, and he played in our touch football team, and I just ran off him all night. I thought how good it would have been to play with this bloke. You just see they're both quality players that, I was lucky, like I said, played with Jimmy and Dino and Jason Smith and those types of players. But these two guys, in my mind, through the era that, we played through, were just second to nobody. They were just a level above everybody else and what they did. And if you were lucky enough to be in their sides, then you should be pretty happy you played with those two fellas.
Yeah, I think growing up, Freddie Fittler was my favourite non-Parramatta player, and would have loved to have seen that.
We nearly went to Parramatta. I remember reading the story. I hadn't signed yet, and Parramatta were after him. I remember reading it. I was chip-rocking somewhere, and I was reading the paper, but I thought Freddie was nearly going to be there, but he ended up at Penrith, I suppose.
How things could have changed.
Yes.
What about today's game? Is there a player that you would love to have played against or in your team? Today's game?
In today's game, mate, there's a lot of blokes that they're, I just admire the way that Nathan Cleary plays. At the moment, he's just probably that player that everybody would love to have in their team. I used to love watching Cameron Smith. I used to think Cameron Smith was just the ultimate leader and player. I would love to have played with him. Kieran Foran, quite close with Kieran. Didn't coach Kieran for a while. Love how he plays the game. He'd be I'd love to play with a player like him. I think it'd be unfair. I think there's so many. Adam Reynolds, Cody Walker. The list just goes on. Like it just these guys, that at this day and age, the skill level that they play at, how they play, particularly, Greg Inglis, those types of guys, Sam Burgesses, these are just guys that people just don't sort of look at it now, but when you look back, they're how fantastic and how good players they really are. A lot of good players at the moment.
Definitely. Who was the larrikin or prankster at Parramatta when you played there, either in the first time or the second time?
We didn't really have a lot of pranksters. No, there's no one really. Like, there was a few that sort of stick out, but there wasn't any real sort of pranksters. Stu Kelly was a pretty funny fella.
Yeah.
Stewie'd always do something stupid. That was his nickname, Stupid.
Yeah.
Stewie'd always do something stupid and it'd give you a laugh. Jimmy was always a funny fella, Jimmy Dimmick. Jimmy, I don't think anybody that's met Jim or Jim you ever get called by your first name ever again. He'll give you a nickname that'll stick with you for the rest of your life. He was pretty funny. He still does it. He's just one of those blokes that just come up with a nickname for someone off the drop of a hat. He was pretty funny. Darryl Trindle was a character.
Oh, yeah.
At South, Tricky. He was a character. Tricky would do some pretty stupid things around the joint that you'd laugh at. But, no one really that sticks to mind, mate.
What nickname did Jimmy give you?
I got stuck with Mush.
Okay.
So if you're ever talking to anybody in rugby league and they say, you know Mush or you've spoken to Mush, they'll 9 times out of 10 tell you. No one knows me as Dave.
Okay.
Very, very early. Only at my job now because no one sort of knows but there'll be someone who'll come in from NRL or someone you pop in that you used to coach and they'll say, how's Mush going? And they won't know who you're talking about, except for Lukey Bird. He works up here. He calls me Mush, so see him all the time. That stuck from Jimmy, stuck to me from an old movie.
Nice.
It just got stuck. It's got stuck.
All right. Well, we'll wrap things up with the set of 6 segment that I brought to you by Jack's Pale Ale, exclusively available at the club shop at Parramatta Leagues Club. Outside of rugby league, is there a favourite sport that you like either watching or playing?
Outside of rugby league, I love watching the English Premier League.
Okay.
I love watching the English Premier League, the soccer. Yeah.
Do you have a team?
Mate, I don't. I don't really. No, I did. Everybody thinks I'll jump ship. About 10 years ago, or longer, 15 years ago, when I started, obviously watching it, following a bit. I used to love Man City, and that was before they did anything well. And I think it was only because Manchester United was the gun team, so I always like to go for an underdog.
Okay,
But I just like them. But I don't really follow it to a extent where I follow a team in particular. Just love watching the soccer. That's great.
Yeah, no, fair enough. What's your specialty dish in the kitchen or on the barbecue?
Specialty dish.
Yeah, what do you whip up?
I don't mind cooking a penne pasta with mushroom, chicken, and avocado.
Nice.
Bit of a creamy sauce.
Nice.
It's probably the only one I know really. My wife's a good cook, so I don't get into the kitchen too often.
Oh, that's all right, mate. I'm the same, mate. I'm a bacon and eggs guy and steak and sausages. That's about it.
Yeah, it's pretty simple for me too. Yeah.
Who is the most famous person you'd love to meet and have a chat with?
Oh, I said this ages ago, but I love Denzel Washington.
Okay,
I think he's that sounds really weird and out of context, but I love his movies. So I'd like to meet him. Yeah, that'd be great.
If you were stuck on a deserted island, which 3 former teammates wouldn't you want to be stuck with, and why?
Which former 3 wouldn't I want to be stuck with?
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. 3. Hang on, let me think about this. 3 former teammates who I not want to be stuck with.
Who would drive you crazy?
Who would drive me mad?
Yeah.
Dennis Moran.
Oh,
He would drive me mad. He's a good fella. Big Dennis would drive me bonkers. Darryl Trindle, because he just could not sit still. He would drive me mad. And who would be the last one? Probably Aaron Raper.
Oh,
He'd be the same.
Yeah.
Rapes. Yeah. He's another one that he couldn't sit still, which would all 3 of them would physically drive me mad. I reckon.
Yeah.
Just because they were all just non-stop, 100 mile an hour. So.
Yeah, fair enough. Now, if you weren't a rugby league player, what profession do you think you would have done or wanted to do growing up?
Growing up, being a soccer player.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
I used to love soccer as a kid, yeah.
Who was your favourite band or solo artist to listen to?
Favourite band was Matchbox 20.
Oh, yeah?
And I know you're going to laugh at me with this, but I used to love Michael Jackson.
Oh, no, he's pretty good, mate. He's pretty good. What's
Yeah.
your favourite Matchbox 20 song?
3 a.m. Would have to be one of my favourites, yeah.
Classic. I saw them in concert 10 years ago, 15 years ago, or whatever. Something like that.
Yeah.
Well, David Penna, thank you very much for your time and chat today here on the Parramatta podcast. I really enjoyed it. It was great. I could have spoken for hours.
No worries.
I'm sure the fans will love it too. And it's been great to chat with a player who played at the club I love in the Parramatta Eels. I hope one day to catch up and say good day and listen to more of your stories.
Mate, anytime, mate. I'd be more than happy to have a chat. That'd be great.
No worries. Thank you very much for coming on the
Parramatta
podcast.
Go the Eels. See you, mate. Bye.
Well, welcome back, and thanks for listening to David Penna and his rugby league and life story. I really enjoyed that chat with David. I hope you did too. It was great, again, to chat with a player who played at the club that I love in the Parramatta Eels. I thank you, David, for your time, and I wish you luck in the coaching world as well for next season, and hopefully maybe catch up next year up there on the Gold Coast. Once again, a quick shout out and thanks to Jack's Pale Ale, a fantastic major sponsor of the podcast, for supporting the podcast throughout the year and beyond. Don't forget, Jack's Pale Ale is back and available to purchase in the club shop. Perfect a drink into summer. So head into the club shop and get some today. Thanks also to co-sponsor Shannon Cooney from the Merrick Property Group, who you can hear at the top of the podcast. Contact Shannon for all your Penrith and Lower Blue Mountains real estate needs, either buying or selling. Also, the Stubby Club as well. Thank you very much for your support. Don't forget to head to www.thestubbyclub.com.au and order your NRL merchandise today using that Paracave discount code, and you will get 10% off. And also, once again, if you are buying a property from Shannon Cooney from the Merrick Property Group, why not contact Bo Cook from Loan Market? Once again, his contact number is 0401 213 236. Get in contact with him for a free chat and see how he and his team can help you get on top of your home loan and find you that best deal. Please support these businesses that support the podcast, that help bring you quality entertainment each week. Share the love on socials as well. And if you would like to become a sponsor of the podcast and get your business noticed, please feel free to send me a DM on socials, or even email the Paracave Podcasts, all one word, at yahoo.com, and we'll see what we can do for each other. Thank you once again to you, the listeners who are currently listening to the podcast, for listening to my grand final and season review, which was done via a live video on the Paras Eels Army Facebook page. If you, the listener, enjoyed that sort of thing, please leave some feedback via the Facebook page, and next season, during the NRL season, it might be something that we might do again after each game. If you enjoy that sort of stuff, we'll do the live video and we'll also bring that out as a podcast. But please leave some feedback as well. I'd like to know your thoughts on that one. Thank you to you, the listeners, for listening and sharing that grand final podcast with your family and friends. If you liked it, please give it a 5-star rating and review on the podcast platform that you listen to. You will also be able to catch myself on Pulse FM, probably talking about the World Cup that is currently kicking off, or has kicked off, probably on a Friday or a Sunday with the World Cup. So tune in to the Duckman's Weekend Sports Wrap Show on 89.9 FM radio, Pulse FM. It'll usually be about 6:20 p.m. So I might be on there talking the Rugby League World Cup, which is currently happening. And also, thanks again to the official media partner of the podcast, the Parramatta Times. For all your local Parramatta news, simply head to www.parramattatimes.com.au and keep an eye out on the social media channels, especially the Facebook page, for this month's edition of the Parramatta Times, the digital edition. And just before I go, something new that I'm going to probably try and do for the rest of this year and potentially next year as well, with the podcast. Going to have a question of the week. So something where you guys, the listeners, can get involved. You can leave some feedback via the podcast Facebook page or the Instagram, or even via Apple Podcasts feedback. And something that you guys can get, listeners can get involved in. Would like to know your thoughts, and we'll try and have a question of the week each week. So to finish off, this week's question is: should the Parramatta Eels, the club that I follow, have paid the $4,000 fine for Ryan Madison? Not Ryan Payet. In order for him to play the first 3 weeks of the competition, of the NRL competition in 2023. So I'd like to know your thoughts on that one. Should the club have paid the $4,000 fine for Ryan to play? He's taken the 3-game suspension But I'd like to know your thoughts on that one. So head to the podcast Facebook page or the Instagram page and leave your thoughts, or even Apple Podcasts as well. So leave your feedback and I'll discuss it on next week's podcast, your opinions. In the meantime, stay safe wherever you are listening from in this world of ours. Have a great week. Enjoy the Rugby League World Cup, as I said just before, which is currently on. Have a great week as best you can, and I'll catch you next week for episode 116. There's a few more episodes to come this season, this year, so stay tuned for those ones. The next one is with another popular Parramatta player from back in the day. He was certainly one of my favourites, but stay tuned to the socials to see who's coming up next. And once again, if you want to send me a DM on socials, by all means, go ahead. Always up for a chat about the greatest game of all and the Parramatta Eels, or even simply who you would like to see come on the show for a chat, and I'll see if I can get them on. Always up for a rugby league or Parramatta Eels chat, especially in the off season, or even a chat about the Rugby League World Cup. But to sign off the show, and as I always say, the Parra Cave Podcast, by the fan, for the fans. Go Parra!